But I do want to do a couple quick thank yous and kind of share a little bit about what this day is a product of. So my name is Dylan Kimmel. I'm a complex coordinator in residence life and housing, and I serve as the co-chair for the campus sustainability working group within the sustainability task force here on campus. So if you're not familiar with the task force, it's sort of for a number of years now been sort of a catalyst for sustainability work here at the University of Delaware. We have a number of folks here in the room as well, and in addition, including Michael Chachis, who's one of the co-chairs of the Sustainability Task Force. So if you have any questions about that throughout the course of the day, feel free to ask me. I'm kind of putting him on the spot as well for someone who can talk on behalf of it. But the mission of the task force is to stimulate and raise awareness and educate the campus community about sustainability issues and really promote existing sustainability practices at the university. And so this specific Campus Sustainability Day as a whole is planned by myself and Katie Gunderman in the back, who will introduce herself in a couple of minutes as well. But this specific luncheon is actually a co-sponsorship between ourselves as well as the Green Liaisons program. So we want to thank Francis and Emily, who co-chair that in the back, who we combined efforts today. And so if you are here on behalf of the Green Liaisons program specifically, I believe they have a sign-in sheet up here and would appreciate at some point today if you could come up and just let them know who's here, because they do generally track attendance on behalf of the Green Liaisons program. But if you're here for other reasons, no need to sign in. We love the fact that you're here. So also just want to give a quick plug to the rest of our Campus Sustainability Day program. We have an evening event tonight in the Harrington Commons. It's a celebratory feel. There's some performance groups on campus that are coming by, the improv group, the Rubber Chickens, and also one of our a cappella groups on campus is performing. We have some activities. Some student groups on campus will be tabling who are invested in sustainability. And so if you are around this evening and would like to come stop by, we've got some fun giveaways, some pretty hefty sized gift cards if you want to come by and participate. So hopefully some of you will be able to also join us later this evening for the second half of Sustainability Day. But for now, I want to go ahead and shut up and let you all eat. So we're going to take about 15, 20 minutes or so and get started and let our featured speaker, Sustainability Manager Michelle Bennett, eat. And then we will do a quick intro of her and allow her to start her portion of the program. So I have no method for this other than maybe don't all quite get up at once for food. But we have plenty of options. We do have vegan options and gluten-free options, but they are not out. So if you fall into that category and need that, please just come let me know, and I can let the folks know in the back to bring those out. But they typically wait until those folks need it and then bring them out. But we do have vegan options out, but we do have a vegan sandwich that they can bring out as well. So let me know if you fall into that category, and I'd be happy to get it for you. Thanks.
She's a Tennessee native with degrees in cultural anthropology, English literature, and a master's in environmental studies. She has lived and worked all over the East Coast and abroad, starting sustainability at Macquarie University in Sydney, Australia. She brings years of experience in energy efficiency, sustainability, and working in higher education institutions to the University of Delaware. This semester, she's focused on the university's greenhouse gas emissions and energy consumption patterns, while she gets to know the UD community. Please help me in welcoming Michelle Bennett. Also, please feel free to continue eating the food.
And don't be shy to get up and get food as well, because it's really good. So highly recommend. So I have a little PowerPoint for everyone today, and it's just kind of to get to know me, get to know how I kind of see the university. I don't have a background at the University of Delaware. The first time I had ever been on campus was for my interview. So I bring that kind of outsider's perspective in, for better or worse. And also, you know, as I get to know people and as I get to become more familiar with the university and get lost less, you know, it's very much an evolving vision. So it's nothing set in stone, but here we go. So who is this Michelle Bennett character? Since it's an academic institution, I feel like I have to, you know, put that out there. I grew up in the Deep South my whole life, despite the lack of an accent, don't be fooled. And when I wanted to go get an undergraduate education, I wanted to run as far away as possible. So as far as I got was Western Massachusetts. Don't ever spend a winter there. And then for my graduate school, I finally had the flexibility and the freedom to study something I was really engaged in because I was paying the bills, my parents weren't. So I switched from a pure humanities focus to environmental science, got on board and found a really good program in Australia that has been an interdisciplinary program since the late 50s, early 60s, and has always implemented environmental and sustainability issues rather than studying water quality or law or policy or the traditional kind of siloed education areas that environment has kind of fallen into over the years. I've also traveled quite a bit. I've done a lot of different things. In college I was a whitewater rafting guide, which was great. But the river I was on, more importantly, was a wild and scenic designated river, which means there's no roads, there's no buildings, there's none of that. And you get out there and it's just beautiful and serene and gorgeous, and you start to appreciate how someone building a Home Depot 50 miles away or 100 miles away can affect the water quality in a river that otherwise is almost not quite clean enough to drink. So it gave that perspective of how environmental issues can be local and global and regional all at the same time. That's Macquarie University's green, which has all those wonderful eucalypt trees that always look half dead, but they're also half alive. That's a permeable surface down there. My previous job before starting here, I was an energy efficiency analyst at a consulting firm. We implemented the BG Smart Energy Savers program, and I was the Excel spreadsheet chick. So that's what I did for 3.5 years. So there's a lot related to sustainability going on the university campus, and I see part of my role is definitely communicating that. We have a huge academic community involved in different sustainability issues, whether they want the sustainability stamp on it or not. We have everything from the kind of traditional environmental hard sciences all the way down to, say, a certificate in sustainable fashion. And I just heard about, a cooking class where you can learn about kind of sustainable footprint issues with cooking while you're also eating delicious food. So I see part of sustainability on campus definitely driven by the community as a whole. Like, I don't want to rush in and say this is what we should do. I'm happy to champion issues. I'm happy to share my perspective on it, but it's definitely a conversation that I want to get started on campus. I sit in the facilities department and in the energy and engineering group, and that's important because that shifts some of my focus and my perspective on campus. It's also important because I get to work with that group that has such a strong influence on what's going on campus in the physical space. We are redoing our website. We have a Twitter account, so communications, we're working on that historically. Sustainability has been kind of communicated on campus, but there's always room for improvement. And then project proposal and management. So if you see an opportunity within facilities to do something or within other areas of campus, I have the background and certainly the leeway that I can kind of lead the way on some projects. So this semester I'm focusing on our carbon emissions, and part of that is because one of the first things I picked up was the climate commitment that President Harker made in 2008, where he said, oh, well, we need to reduce our carbon emissions by 20% by 2020, and then kind of what's been going on since then. So I dug into the numbers, and I thought, well, a really good way to present that is to say, what does a ton of CO2 really mean? Because it's, CO2 is scentless, it's invisible. We kind of hear it as this boogeyman in the atmosphere, but it's really hard to get your hands on what that actually means. So a ton of CO2 looks like that orange ball there. It's about 3 odd stories tall, or the size of one of those small houses on the edge of campus. And when your atmosphere is about as thick as the orange bit of an orange peel, it takes up quite a bit of space if you compress it down. And when you start adding it up and adding it up, a day of emissions in New York City can vary the Empire State Building. And incidentally, that number is very close to what we do in a year. So we are around 365th the size of New York, whatever that means. So just as a visual cue, if we put that mountain on top of the campus, it would vary most of the campus probably, and it would give us an idea of what our annual emissions are. And I also plugged a few other numbers just to kind of try and get an idea of what the perspective is. So if you look at our electricity consumption, there's some little stats about what they kind of equate to. So 32 of the Lewis turbines, you know, about 2.5 trips to the moon in a jet plane. That was really fun to calculate. But the big one for me is this one at the bottom. You know, in a year, our electricity consumption is a tiny fraction of a coal-fired power plant. And if you think of the tens of thousands of those, maybe millions of them around the globe, it's kind of sobering how much CO2 is being emitted every day across the planet. And it's, when you start thinking about how thin that atmosphere is, you kind of see how parts per million really do start to have a really big impact. So back in the day, 2008, we said 20% by 2020. What have we done since then? Well, as of 2014, we've had a 2.5% reduction in our CO2 emissions, and a lot of that is because our regional power plants have switched from coal to natural gas, which burns cleaner. And right now the economics make a lot of sense. But that's not to say that the university itself hasn't done anything. The university's been growing, our student body has been growing, and our emissions per square foot, our emissions per student have been going down. So we are becoming more efficient, but we're kind of treading water right now, is where we're at. So the next question is, can we get there? You know, if we want to make 20% by 2020, is that a reasonable goal? And it depends. If I want to start that discussion where we say, as a community, we really want to double down on that. We want students and faculty and staff and everyone to get involved to really say that's going to be a priority on campus, or maybe instead we want to focus on diversity and equity on campus. Those are sustainability issues too. Sustainability looks at economics, looks at social issues, and the environmental issues. So this role isn't just about the environmental stuff, but it needs to be part of the conversation. So if we as a community say, hey look, we're going to work on that 20% maybe by 2025 or 2030, that's a perfectly reasonable goal, but it's something that we need to communicate as a community so that the administration's on board, so that the faculty are on board, so that everyone's on board. So what I really want to do is start that conversation. And I also like to throw in there the cost-effective thing. Sustainability is about economic and fiscal responsibility, not just spending a lot of money, because there's a lot of proposals people have that are fantastic, but not all of them make sense on a campus where we don't want to raise tuition. And finally, if you have things where you're wondering, like, what can I do if I just want to work on my environmental footprint a little bit? If you see maintenance issues, definitely report them to our wonderful facilities department. The facilities department on this campus actually does a fantastic job responding to maintenance issues when you compare them to other similar universities. And it might seem like it takes a while, but what they're doing is balancing that with other priorities. But if you look at how long it takes on average, we're actually like leaders in that area. So if you see a leaky faucet, anything like that, your dorm's really hot and you gotta open the windows just to survive. Your dorm's really cold and you're like burning a little trash can in the corner to keep warm, like let us know, guys. Because we can help out with those things. We are transitioning buildings from our summer settings to our winter settings. That takes a little bit of time. But once those are done, if we still have these issues, we can address them. Turn off your lights. If you plug your phone in overnight, every night, it's an energy vampire. Even though your phone is charged, it's still drawing the same amount of electricity as when it's replenishing its battery. Bring your reusable bags. That seems so simple, but plastic bags are such a notorious source of pollution, not to mention eyesore. When they break up and wash into waterways, they get into the ocean, and plastic is actually replacing microbes in the food chain, which is really, really bad. So, you know, little things like that do actually make a huge impact. And I also will have information tonight in Harrington about recycling on campus and how you can recycle batteries and CFLs and other things. So that's it. And the rest I wanted to open up for questions, comments, anything, discussion.
I think it's interesting that the per capita is kind of going down. It's a good way to personalize it.
Yeah, and it's a really good because it looks at what kind of resources we are offering to the community and how efficient we're using those resources. When I see inefficiency, I see a lot of environmental issues, but I also see money going out the window. So if we can provide the same services more efficiently, our carbon footprint will certainly go down. So I There's a question back.
I understand there's a sustainability fund. Wonder if that's going to be made available for students to kind of apply for projects to initiate sustainability initiatives on campus.
I am so glad you asked. We have a green fund, which is for students and faculty projects, and it is slated explicitly for proposals with the student body. So if you have a project that you think you can kind of tie into sustainability, go online. That website is in good shape, and I don't personally control it. It's called the Green Fund. It's out there, and you can submit a proposal. There's guidelines and things on there, and do that any old time, guys. The Green Fund committee will have decision-making power over that fund. They've asked me to help administer it, just to keep the ball rolling and make sure somebody's always kind of got their eye on it. So I'll be looking at those, bringing them to the committee, and together the committee will be making decisions on what we want to fund. Anyone else? Don't be shy.
Fielding some questions over here, so I was hoping maybe you could elaborate on how your position will specifically interface with the Sustainability Task Force, but a lot of people who've been on campus for a few years are familiar with it.
Yep, absolutely. So the Sustainability Task Force, if you're not familiar with it, is a volunteer organization of faculty and students and staff members who are just involved in sustainability. There's a number of committees, including the Green Fund Committee and some other committees. And that group was, one of the groups very instrumental in creating this role. So the way I see my interaction with them is to support the task force and their different committees as a whole, to communicate and take direction from them, and also to offer my ideas, my expertise, or whatever it might be, to say, okay, you know, here is just to participate in it, I guess. So I see it really as a great discussion forum on campus. I see it as a great way to get decision-making over certain issues done. So for example, in the Green Fund, to say, okay, we want to fund specific projects. Some of them, I mean, it's not a small amount of money that's in there, so some of them could have an impact on campus, a non-trivial impact. And I also see it as an area where, you know, I can come in and say, okay, well, if we need leadership on an issue, you know, tell me what you need, what you want, how I can help, and I'll throw myself into it. So I really do see it as a two-way interaction and as a really important community forum. So if you're really interested in sustainability on campus, you want to learn more about it, like please do get involved or come to the Green Liaisons lunches. This is one for this month. And there's other areas where people can kind of get involved on campus.
Can I just piggyback on that? So I'll speak from the task force standpoint. So again, Michael Change is co-chair of the task force, and it's a great question. One of the things we're talking about this year is what is the role of the task force, and now that, you know, we've all sort of as a community worked together to get this position, how do we sort of leverage that and move forward? And so we're internally in the task force trying to decide, you know, where the task force, what it should do. One of the things right now is the task force is voluntary and it doesn't report to anyone. So one of the things we're interested in doing is actually getting it in a reporting structure as high up as we can. And so we're looking to actually go forward and talk to interim president Target about, you know, where we can fit in, because we think the task force, with Michelle being part of it and with this position, needs to, you know, fit in fairly high up so that when we all have ideas, they can get up to the upper administration. So that's sort of our hope for the task force. And where I was going to mention before, any ideas you have for the task force, you know, more for environmental issues, you know, you can send them to me, to the task force, to Michelle. But we hope with your support we'll, you know, become more prominent on campus by getting the task force, you know, at a higher level and building up what in the strategic plan now, in the Delaware Will Shine says that there eventually will be an office of sustainability. So we have a manager now, we don't yet have an office, and so we hope we can build that over the years.
Yes?
I think before you mentioned you were interested in cultural sustainability. Could you just elaborate on that a little? What does that mean?
Absolutely. Sustainability takes kind of an egalitarian social view. The representation, diversity, you know, kind of liberal ideals are really important for society, because when people can't eat, why were they going to protect the environment where they're probably subsidizing their sustenance? If people don't have a say in their governments, you know, where is the impetus to, say, conserve land for species protection or to preserve water quality. So those issues are an integral part. And the classic kind of sustainability spiel is that there's, you know, 3 pegs to a stool. There's the social, environmental, and economic. And what it's doing is it's taking an anthropocentric view of kind of the natural world and trying to bring all of those issues together to say they recognize that they do interact and that they do feed into each other. So when we're talking on campus about diversity and equity and you know, student participation from different groups, that's really important, and my ears always perk up because I recognize that if we're not inclusive in that way, we can't address some of the other issues on campus because those issues that for people, you know, just taking good care of the members of our community are going to trump, you know, the warm and fuzzy environmental stuff almost any time. So, and I would never, you know, want to presume that saving the panda bears is more important than helping and saving people. So, did that answer your question?
I think so.
And I can dig deeper into it. My background is more on the environmental side, so you know I try to use my cultural anthropology background to come in on it, but I'm not as well educated on it. So I see it over here. Yeah.
I know you haven't been here long, but do you know or have you some sense of what some of the low-hanging fruit are or what UD could be doing better to advance sustainability?
Yeah, we're tracking that down. We have really good information on kind of the building level, so the building scale. Almost all of our buildings on campus are meters or sub-meter now. But getting down to the nitty-gritty of, well, in this specific building, is it the HVAC or the ventilation, which ties into HVAC, or the lighting, or is there, you know, water leaking somewhere that we're not aware of? So I'm getting personally down to that point where I'm starting to understand some of our individual buildings better. And an example I like to use is that the ice lab is one of our top 20 energy consumers, but when you look at what's in that building, it's a very efficient building. Because labs use a lot of energy. Moving all that nice air-conditioned air out every time you have chemicals out from the ventilation in the hoods is a really good way to take all that that energy embedded in that that conditioned air, like right out the chimney. And when you compare that building to say some of our older lab buildings, and you know, per square foot, per number of labs, number of hoods, you start to say, okay, there's something going on in this building where there's opportunities to improve our energy efficiency. So I'm getting there, and part of what I'm trying to support within facilities is saying, okay, let's get a good idea of what we've got. We have it, but bringing it into one place where we can start analyzing it and picking it apart is part of the challenge, because we have so many knowledgeable, experienced people on campus who kind of know it in their head, but writing it down in a way that we can all start comparing it, it's all apples to apples, is the next step. And every university struggles with this, so we're certainly not behind the curve in that respect, but we're working on it. So stay tuned.
That was actually a segue to my other question, which is how you're kind of networking with other campuses around the country, whether or not you're part of ISHI. You just kind of speak to that, how you're forming collaborations in-state, across the region, and nationally.
Absolutely. I approach that from a few different ways. I'm on Twitter, which sounds kind of like, oh, Twitter, right. But you can connect to any sustainability program on any campus, and also other programs on different campuses. And then when you hear about something that they're doing, you can say, hey, you know, let's set up a phone call and do that. Every time I'm on there, which is not very often, not even every day, and I notice that the university has promoted something that they've recently done or won an award, I always say, oh, fantastic, congratulations, so-and-so. Because later down the road, I have a little door, foot in the door, where I can say, aha, you know, I want to learn about that later. And I have like a list and a notebook, so that when we start looking for solutions and ideas, I can start reaching out and learning from other people's examples. I have read more than my fair share of climate action plans and strategic plans, which are really dry, but also really educating. I still have some contacts from my previous job in Australia, and I have reached out to them in the past to say, oh, how did you implement that? What did you run into for that? So I have a little bit of those connections. I'm slowly fostering more of those. I would love to go to a conference or two. We'll see how that goes. We do, I don't think we're like an official member of the ASHI kind of network, but I've started putting out feelers to see if that's something we want to do. And then there's the presidential climate commitment where we can compare ourselves at least on a greenhouse gas emissions level with other similar universities. So that's also kind of helpful. And then when you know someone's doing really good in recycling, you can always reach out and say, yeah, how did you do it? So slowly but surely.
What's your Twitter handle?
It is at UD Sustainable. And that was one of the first things I launched. I think it was in early September. So yes, please friend or connect or whatever the terminology is on Twitter. I just push the button.
If I followed you correctly, it's Del Sustainable.
That's it. So, see, it just loads on my phone, so I'm just on there when I'm walking across campus or whatever.
Going forward, is there going to be a better effort on behalf of PP&D and the Office of the Architect to have building renovations designed and completed in a sustainable
Sorry.
fashion?
On behalf of PP&D,
And the Office of the Architect to have building renovations designed and completed in a sustainable fashion with the end intent of getting buildings LEED certified.
Excellent. So our policy right now, and it is a policy, even if it's not super official, written down, set in stone, is that all new buildings will be built to LEED equivalency. So what that means is we could submit for LEED certifications. In theory, we would pass, but there's like that little bit of wiggle room. I would love to see us get at least one building certified so that we can make the push that, okay, we have the experience, we need to do that. Let's do more, let's do more, let's do more. Just as like that kind of foot in the door to start prying the door open. That is definitely a discussion we're having internally. I don't know about major renovations, and I want to make that case that major renovations should also be to that standard. One issue that has already kind of popped up is that when you apply for the LEED certification, it ain't cheap. Now, when you look at the bill you get for a gigantor building, it's like a tiny percent of it, but it's still like tens of thousands of dollars. And when the budget is really, really tight, that's like the first thing you're going to cut because it's a warm and fuzzy. So it could be that we've had buildings, and I don't know specifically because I am not involved with the Caesarati project, and I'm not involved with the new dorm they're going to start coming up soon, because a lot of that conversation has already taken place before I started. But the intention may have been there to say, okay, we're going to go for certification, and then as costs start to kind of balloon out the way you don't expect them to, they say, well, let's do this right instead of put a sticker on the door. I think there's room for both, but that's a discussion we need to have. And if there's more expression of interest in that on campus, more pressure for that on campus, I think it would pop up higher on the priority list. So, and that's one of the discussions I would love to have on campus, because there are whole cities that say new buildings must be the LEED Gold certified. And, so you look at where the industry is moving, and it's interesting. Now, having said that, I will say that just because a building is LEED certified does not implicitly guarantee it will always be more efficient than similar buildings. It starts out that way, and you're supposed to recertify every few years to make sure you're still running the building efficiently. But when you start getting points for really important things like stormwater and biodiversity, those points can kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? They can balance out, say, water efficiency. So there are minimum requirements which are really important and help a building kind of benchmark and be more efficient than most buildings. But that doesn't mean 10 years down the road, if something gets out of whack within the building and the ventilation system or something, it will still be that efficient. So it's a really good tool, but it doesn't guarantee anything unless you're constantly coming back and recertifying, which is tens of thousands of dollars every few years on your operations and maintenance budgets. So yes, I'm all for it, but it's a conversation we need to have as a community and say, this is what we want. We want our campus to have LEED buildings and at what level. Yes.
Has there been any discussion about bringing composting to campus? Do we work with Aramark or Dining Services?
Yes and no. We had a composting contract until our wonderful composting facility shut down due to neighbors complaining of unpleasant scents. A composting facility that smells bad is not, they got something out of whack in their little ecosystem there. Aramark did opt in for some digesters, which are not composting, but what they do is they break down food into something really benign that can go into the sewer system. So it's kind of another angle at a similar problem. What that means is we're not putting as much food waste in the garbage and shipping it off to landfill where we're locked up forever. I would love to reinvigorate that as an issue because I'm a gardener, so I love compost, but also I think it's an opportunity for education and a lot of other issues on campus. I do think that the best way to get traction on that is to find a model where it's at least cost neutral, if not revenue positive. And the reason for that is the classic, they're really passionate about not raising tuition rates any more than they need to, and that would be a non-trivial new program to launch. And I don't know if there are any academic programs that would be willing to fit the bill even with an educational component, which means it would come down to facilities to do something with it, with that academic, in partnership. And that, means that we have to spend a lot more money on a program that's a non-trivial cost. So it is definitely a conversation we have ahead of us that I would love to investigate because I think in the grand scheme of our waste, our food waste is probably where a lot of our emissions are sourced. But our waste is like, it's like 12% of our emissions. It's not ginormous, but it's, come on, it's improved.
Yes. Caesar Rodney goes way over 1,000. It's probably like 1,300 pounds of food a day. And basically, it had like a clean plate program similar to Michigan State.
Mm-hmm.
Students don't have to take large helpings.
Yeah.
They can actually go back for seconds. If you look at this room here, 75% of the plates are empty. You're not throwing anything away. If you just get their attention and create a different attitude,
And one
the waste
thing
will go down.
Yeah, no, and I agree 100%. And one thing I really want to improve on that has not been done really extensively here on campus is student outreach to say, hey, did you know when you throw that away, like it doesn't just go away. And a lot of people kind of know that, but they don't think about it deeply. And part of that is how our waste system works in the developed world, and part of that is like, hey, I'm really busy, I have a test coming out, a paper to write. I thought I was really hungry when I came in, but now that I'm thinking about all the stress in my life, I suddenly lost my appetite, or whatever it is, right? I know that happens to me. So having that outreach component where we say, hey, I would love a program where we have like kind of reusable to-go containers that people can bring or grab or something. Or a program where, we say, I don't know, some kind of outreach thing. And I don't have a specific idea. But just to say, like, guys, if you're cognizant about this stuff, it really does make a huge difference. And that's why I threw the little guys up here, like, plastic bags. Everyone's like, oh, okay, bring your reusable bag, but that makes a huge difference because plastic bags are so nefarious in what they do to the environment on multiple levels. So we're rebuilding the sustainability website. I have a student intern who's helping me with that. I'm hoping to launch it at the end of the semester. The old website hadn't been updated since like 2012, so we're just burning it down and starting from scratch. It's going to be on the new WordPress servers, so it's going to have new look, new feel. It's going to have a lot more kind of interactive features on it, so it'll have a Twitter feed and all that good stuff. And we're reorganizing it in a way that hopefully it will be, step one, a resource if students have questions like, hey, how do I recycle batteries on campus? And then step two, information about what we're doing on campus. But I really want it to be a resource for students or faculty or staff on campus, can get engaged and involved with the program on some level. And we will be highlighting volunteer opportunities and other stuff as we make those connections with the volunteer coordinators.
ARA does have reusable green containers that the students can take their food in.
Okay.
But they choose to starve them, and then they just stack them up outside, and they're eating food on the way out, because they're in a hurry. They have, time is of the essence, and, you know, like you said, they have something else on their mind. And then they just throw it on the ground, or because the trash can's full, or they take it in the residence halls and throw it on the floor, because they're done before they reach the elevator.
Right, right.
And then we take them away, they don't degrade.
Yeah.
They're not biodegradable.
Yeah, and that's.
And I don't think they realize it, or they're not thinking of that moment.
Yeah, and that's a huge outreach thing, because, I mean, people shouldn't be throwing anything on the ground, even if the trash cans are full, in theory.
Considering the dumpsters within sight.
Yeah, exactly. So,
But anyway, they have an option, and they just don't realize it.
yeah, so that communication, that outreach, absolutely. And those are issues that I'll get together with our other fine folk and facilities and say, what are the issues you run into? Because we can put that stuff on the website, we can get it out there. And when I go and talk to student groups or at different things around campus, I can bring them up and say, hey, by the way, did you know that those to-go containers are reusable? You know, switch that out and bring it back and use it again. Or, hey, if, you know, the trash can is full, that dumpster's right there. And the nice thing about that dumpster is that, you know, it's got, you just like throw it, but I'm sure it goes in there, please. I don't know, there's a lot of different issues we can start to communicate better that in the past, like, you know, that's the kind of thing that I wouldn't even be aware of, because I don't go in the dorms. You know, I got enough dorms in my undergrad, so. And ours weren't as nice.
You know, talking about the plastic bag too, to ask you what your, the conservation advisory committee in the city of Park, they've been working on plastic bag issue for years.
I could definitely check it out. I haven't sat down to kind of strategize something around that issue specifically. I bring it up because it's a big one. And it is a relatively straightforward thing anyone can do. I know I've got like 3 of them just floating around in my car. And when I roll down the windows, they attack me. So it reminds me that they're there. But yeah, I could definitely check out lots of organizations that already have programs for these issues and see what it would take to bring them in, because I'm a one-woman shop, so there's only so much I can do. When it comes to outreach, if there are programs that already exist that we can bring in, and those organizations are happy to come in, then it makes everyone's life easier.
I recommend the Surfrider Foundation. That's what we used in Oregon, and they were successful in banning plastic bags within Portland city limits. Since we're a coastal state.
Yeah, yeah. And if you guys have ideas like that, like definitely send them to me. I can't guarantee that I'll jump on them immediately, but definitely send them to me. I do have a list of ideas that I get from people, and you know, I keep it updated. And anytime you know we start moving into a new initiative or we see the overlap with an initiative, I go back to that list and I bring it in. And if, for example, I were to ever get a bit more funding and perhaps an outreach coordinator, I could just like give them that list and say, here's what's going on campus. People are really concerned about plastic bags or the green or whatever it is this semester. Like, go forth and just, you know, let hand that off and say, okay, you're much better at this. Like, go to it. Go get them. So I would love to be able to host events. I would love to be able to do all sorts of stuff. But right now, it's me, myself, and I, no budget. So I'm relying on the support of my coworkers who are very interested and engaged to help me out with some of these projects that we'd like to do.
So, thank you all for being here. A couple quick housekeeping things. We do still have some food left, so please eat some on your way out. We also have the room until like 1:30 or so. So, if you want to stay, hang out, ask any last questions to Michelle or any of us that are involved in the task force or anything like that, feel free to stick around for a little while. Let's give Michelle one more round of applause for her. And thank you so much. We hope to see a few of you at the event later this evening. We do have some giveaways for you on the note of plastic bags. We have some reusable ones here for you. We've got some from the Green Liaisons program that are available up here, and then we have some with the Sustainability Task Force. So those are for you. Please take them. I think that's all we've got today. So thank you so much, and have a great rest of your afternoon.